Well, good morning, guys. It's Pastor Andy. Today's April the 28th, and we're looking together in Psalm chapter 75. Psalm chapter 75 is a worship service. They are called to worship God, and Asaph, the leader of this worship service, starts the whole thing off in verse 1, "We thank you, O God." And that's true of every worship, every time of worship. Whenever we worship, true worship centers around God, not around me. If it's going to be true worship, if I'm really worshiping God, it's got to be centered around who He is, what He has done, not me and my needs and what I want and how I feel, but it has to be centered around God, because as we talked about last Sunday, worship is giving worth to something. It is showing who is worthy. So if we are going to worship, we need to have who we are worshiping very firmly set in our minds and the focus of our worship. So if we're going to worship God, we have to be focused on Him. He has to be the priority. He has to be the goal. He has to be the center of our worship. He goes through and makes a transition. He says, "We thank you," but then in verse 2 he says, "God says, at this time I have planned, I will bring justice against the wicked." So he goes from worshiping God here, this introduction, this beginning of the service, to now God is speaking. God is giving the message. In here in verse 4, he says, "I warned the proud, stop your boasting. I told the wicked, don't raise your fists. Don't raise your fist in defiance at the heavens or speak with such arrogance. For no one on earth, from east or west or even from the wilderness, should raise a fist in defiance." He keeps talking about raising a fist against God. I'm going to be, whatever. I'm raising the fist. I'm the one who's in charge. Who are you to tell me what to do, God? I can handle my own life. I'm in charge of my own life. And they're talking about raising a fist. I love what happens now in verse 7. "For it is God alone who judges. He decides who will rise and who will fall." God's the one who determines who raises and who falls. So it has nothing to do with me raising my fist at God and I'm going to win. No. God determines who comes up and who goes down. God determines who is lifted up and who is in authority and who is put down. God alone, it's God alone who judges. He decides who will rise and who will fall. There's a lot of comfort in that. In the world we live in, there's so many people who, well, I don't like this president or I don't like that political party. It's God who puts people up and God who puts people down. We're not commanded to like every leader, but we are commanded to pray for them and to live peaceably. And Romans 13, we are to obey those that have the rule over us. So we are commanded to be good citizens. We're commanded to be good Christians. But ultimately, it is God who lifts up and God who puts down. So when I have a problem with the authority that God has put in my life, guess what? My problem is not with the actual authority that's in my life. My problem is with the ultimate authority who is in my life, and that's God. So when I don't like the leader that God has put me under, I am raising my fist at God. You don't know what you're doing, God. I know better than you. Who are you to tell me what to do? See, I'm not raising my fist at a person. I'm raising my fist and thumbing my nose at the one who put that person in their position and in their place. Because again, it is God alone who judges. He decides who will rise and who will fall. Don't raise your fist at God. Down at the end of the chapter, verse 9, the psalmist makes his decision. He says, "But as for me, I will proclaim what God has done. I will sing praises to the God of Jacob. For God says, I will break the strength of the wicked, but I will increase the power of the godly." It is God who lifts up, and it is God who should be the focus of our life, should be the focus of our worship, should be the focus of our praise. We shouldn't get upset and mad at Him when He does something that we don't like, because His ways are not our ways, His thoughts are not our thoughts. They're higher, we can't even fathom them or understand it, because He is God, and I am not. So I need to trust and obey, as the old song says. For there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. And I am to trust God, and I'm to obey Him because He knows best. And it's Him who lifts up and who puts down. So as for me, I'm going to praise God no matter what happens. How about you? Until tomorrow, God bless you and have a great day.